I want to check in here and share with you a little DM back and forth that I had on Instagram with somebody. And I want you to tell me what you think this individual's background is, just from the conversation. I knew what his background was as soon as he started on the conversation. I want you to see if you can figure out what he does for a living now. The reel that I had posted was about, what the heck was it about? Oh, it was about basically corrective exercises. So trying to do exercises, and in this case it was with a band, because we see all over social media, personal trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, athletic trainers, doing band work with patients, clients, whatever, to increase strength. So my reel was basically, if you're doing band work to either increase strength or increase facilitation, or to increase performance levels, you're probably not going to get any of that, especially if the patient or the client that you're working with has neuromuscular inhibition present as they're doing the band work. Okay, so it really doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's band work, kettlebells, straight bar, dumbbells, whatever. If you're doing some kind of eccentric or concentric resisted exercise and your patient has neuromuscular inhibition, you will get them to train around, their body is going to figure out how to train around the inhibition and recruit whatever it can recruit from the next door neighbor or the other synergist to help them get through the motion that you're making them get through. They're not going to be able to facilitate something that is inhibited. So we know that. Okay, so this individual, one of his first takes was that I believe in band work, and I don't understand why you don't think that you can facilitate contractions while doing band work. Now remember, in the reel, I had said, if you're dealing with somebody who has inhibition and you give them band work, doing eccentric and concentric exercises with bands will not reverse inhibition. And this guy just couldn't figure out why not. Okay. Second one, you're not going to increase strength. So remember, when you're training people, the first response that you're going to get is neurological. So if you start training somebody who is a novice or hasn't trained before and you start doing resisted workouts with them, their body is first going to respond neurologically. And that's the increase in strength that you see. So if you take a 8th grade boy who's never trained with weights and you put him on a 6-week training plan, resisted training plan, 4-day split, something like that, and you're doing periodization and all the good stuff, and let's say his bench press goes up by 10 pounds over 6 weeks. That doesn't mean you increased his strength by 10 pounds. That means neurologically, he figured out how to do something his body had never done before. So now, after 6 weeks, he is primed and prepped now to go get hypertrophy, which is what you're shooting for, which is not what you're getting in the first 6 weeks, because his body is just becoming acclimated to what you were doing resistance-wise. That is a neurological response. So my other point in there was that you're not going to increase strength, and most of the time physical therapists aren't seeing, and even athletic trainers are not seeing patients to the point where they've recovered enough from their injury to now start training for hypertrophy. Once that happens, they're usually out of our clinic and they're on to a strength and conditioning coach or a personal trainer or something like that, okay? So you're not going to get hypertrophy by doing band around the knees, laying on your side clamshells. That's not going to cause hypertrophy with your patient population that you're dealing with in the clinic. This guy once again said, I don't understand that. Yes, you can get hypertrophy by training with bands. So if you are somebody who is training with bands, who is already trained and you're already over that neurological response, and you're using it to the point where you have enough resistance and you don't have inhibition and you're doing all those things, sure, you can increase some strength. But once again, that's not the patient population that we're seeing in the clinic, the overwhelming majority of the time. Okay, so he just couldn't get his head around that either. Okay, so What I did say in the reel was that if you are using bands with patients because you're trying to reinforce normal neuromuscular function after you have already established normal neuromuscular function, then yes, you can use bands to help reinforce movement patterns. Oh, the third thing that I said is you can't use bands to isolate muscles. Okay, if you're doing an eccentric and concentric exercise, you're not isolating muscles. You're using a whole bunch of muscles that should be working together as they're going through this motion. Once again, this guy couldn't understand it. What do you think this guy does for a living? Okay. So if you're using bands after facilitation, so you know they have normal facilitation, and you're trying to get them out of the compensatory patterns that they were using before they came to see you, to play sports, to work out, to walk up and down stairs, whatever it is, yes, you can use bands to do that. And that's how we use bands in the clinic every single day. If you're giving bands to patients because they're really easy to travel with, they're really easy to keep in your office, you can do really easy exercises in a small amount of space. So if you want your patients to be doing their home exercise program multiple times a day, especially if they're in a desk type work situation where they're sitting all day, you want to give them something that they can do intermittently throughout the day, bands are fantastic. But they should be done for a certain purpose, and that certain purpose is not hypertrophy, and that certain purpose is not correctives, because you can't correct inhibition with eccentric and concentric exercises. So if you are giving them band work to do in those situations after you've helped them reestablish normal neuromuscular facilitation, fantastic. Once again, this guy didn't understand that. And what he came back with, now this should, if you haven't figured it out yet, what he came back with, this is a dead giveaway. What he came back with is, show me the research saying that you can't get hypertrophy with band work. Show me the research that you can't reverse neuromuscular inhibition with band work. Show me the research that you can't increase strength when a muscle is inhibited. What do you think this guy does? Okay, so, and his take was, well, this is what I believe. I really like your post, but this is what I believe. And he listed all the things that he believes that flies in the face what I had posted, which basically flies in the face of science. Okay, so my response was, that's fantastic that you believe that, but just because you believe something doesn't mean it's real. If I took 10 people in a room and they all believed that the earth was flat, just because they believe the earth was flat doesn't mean that's the way it is. All right. So what I said was, if you pay attention to what I said, I was saying that this is what neuromuscular physiology says. I'm applying neuromuscular physiology to the situation of a patient coming into your clinic with neuromuscular inhibition, and you're trying to increase hypertrophy and do correctives, and you think you can isolate a muscle by doing band work, doing clamshells, which is completely wrong. So what I said was, what you need to do is go back and review a physiology book. Just go look the facts of physiology up. Stop trying to chase research. Learn the basic science first, and then once you have the basic science, then you probably don't need to waste your day reading research. And he just didn't get it. Then he came back and said, I want you to prove to me that you're right and I'm wrong by showing me research studies. Okay, so what do you think this guy does for a living? If you guessed that he's a PT school professor, bingo! He has a PhD in physiology, but has no freaking clue how to apply it. So this is the type of egomaniac moron that never learned how to take information out of a book and apply it to a human being. All he did was take information out of a book and memorize it and regurgitate it on a test and then go get a PhD. And now he's out teaching people how to be physical therapists, even though he has no clue how exercise works, how physiology works, how neuromuscular function works. No clue, but he is teaching people how to be physical therapists. Now, the other thing that is fantastic about this is this guy is not even in the United States. So not only does PT school suck in the United States, it also sucks overseas, because I think this guy is in Israel. I believe he's in Israel, okay? So good news for you. American PTs aren't the only ones that got screwed over in PT school. Sounds like that's happening all over the world. So please, when you're viewing information, whether it's my information or somebody else's information, hold it up to science. Don't go chasing research, because research is biased. Research is most likely done to feed or support a narrative. It has usually nothing to do with the application of science. And if you understood the basics of science, you wouldn't be reading research in the first place. The unfortunate thing is you didn't learn how to apply science to people when you were in grad school. And if you want to learn how to apply science to people and stop wasting your time reading biased research, make sure you get in the shift, and we will teach you how to do that and give you the thought processes so you can understand what is going on and understand how to defend your thinking when you run into people who have no thinking. They just have memorization of fact, regurgitation of fact, no application of science.